Welcome to the latest installment of our EcoSend Client Story series. Delighted to try something a little bit new and delighted to be joined today by Dom Cooper. Dom is Director of Vue Digital and an EcoSend client now since October 2024. To kick things off, maybe in your own words, Dom, what is Vue Digital all about and what is your role within the team?
Thanks, Chris. Lovely to be here. So I'm Dom. I'm one of the directors of Vue Digital, and we are a sustainability-focused digital marketing agency. We're based down in Devon.
Lovely, yeah, lovely area of the world to be in, even though
Very
it's, as you
beautiful.
say, pretty grey today.
Yeah, a bit grey today.
Cool. Dom, could you maybe describe your scenario a little before you joined EcoSend? I believe you and the team were using Mailchimp for your email campaigns. What kind of problems or challenges were you looking at in your email marketing before working with us?
Yeah, so we'd been on this sort of journey of we're a B Corp, and we've been going on this journey of sort of looking under rocks for ways of doing things slightly better. Email is one of those things where you end up with a big supplier like Mailchimp, and you don't really think about it. And I'm not sure whether I just sort of tripped over James or whether I found you just looking at more sustainable alternatives. But suddenly, when you start looking at the numbers and the data around how much email gets passed around, how much energy
Mm,
use there is, it makes you start to realize about your footprint a little bit more of that. So, um, we were a Mailchimp partner. We still are, and lots of our clients still use Mailchimp. And it wasn't really we didn't really present alternatives at
mm,
that point. Mailchimp, they're, as I say, a big global leader, and they're very good at what they do. Although they seem to want to have moved everything. They used to just really nail email. But then they've created, landing pages and all sorts of things within the platform to become more of an all-round marketing tool. And some of those things are a bit limiting. We end up with legacy packages all over the place for
mm.
our clients with different things that we can do. I remember, promising things to people that I could no longer do because they're constantly shifting things around and finding it just a little bit clunky and hard work to understand what the course of direction is from them. It was very clear when I started talking to you guys what the direction was. We want to minimize the impact of email globally. That's the mission. That came across really succinctly. It really aligned well with our values. And it seemed like you'd already well trodden the path of migrating MailChimp clients to yourselves at EcoSend before I'd even spoken to you. There were guides and things like that all over the website.
I love a lot of the things you said. I think first, looking under rocks around and things around digital sustainability, right? I think it still feels like the topic of email is quite hidden under that rock of awareness around the carbon footprint of email. Even though it's, I think, 347 billion emails sent every day, people still don't quite grasp the effect, the footprint of that. And yeah, I was trying to think when our paths first crossed. I know you're on our season 6 of the podcast, but that was November 2024. So that was just after you'd signed up. But I also love the point you made around migration. I think a lot of prospective clients often balk at the idea of migrating email software due to that sort of perceived effort in migration or the risk maybe even of migration. How did you find the onboarding experience with EcoSend, particularly I'd say during that first 1 or 2 weeks switching over from Mailchimp?
It was really great. We're a digital agency, so we've got in-house tech and design experience, and even so, it requires quite a lot of thinking in terms of that process, and you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere of when you go from the old to the new. And you'd said October. I remember talking to the team about it at the beginning of that summer. So it didn't take very long to do, but it took us quite a long time to get our ducks in line, be organized about what we wanted to do. And I think we probably treated that process as an opportunity to do things slightly differently as well. because you get used to sending from the same template. At the point where you're going to migrate platforms, it's an opportunity to play around with the interfaces, the new templates and everything. And I found that really easy to use. One of the brilliant things is, in particular, your response time. But everyone I'd spoken to at EcoSend, whenever there was something where I thought, I don't really understand this phrase might be slightly different, I all I had to do was drop a line to you, and I'd have something back. Always the same day, but literally within minutes or an hour. You'd never get anything like that from Mailchimp. It would be a link to a support article, and it would take a week for you to get that back from them.
I think it was actually off of one of our conversations that we've made a mini Mailchimp to EcoSend dictionary, the translation dictionary, so that people can understand the terminology, because there's differences in how Mailchimp calls it tags, we call it properties, and obviously coming into a new platform for the first time when you're so used to things being labeled a certain way, it is almost like learning a bit of a different language. So we've made efforts to help with that. But I like what you said as well about taking the opportunity to do a bit of a refresh. Obviously, you can just come in, and we try to help people with bringing old templates in if they just want to get started. But it can be that nice opportunity to think, actually, we've sent the same newsletter template for a period of time now. Maybe we want to rethink some of the design, the branding, or the content, and that provides that kind of opportunity for that. You mentioned you'd be thinking about things during summer. Was there a particular moment when you decided, okay, let's hit the switch button, or did it kind of come organically?
I can't remember I remember the conversation around the driving force for it, and that was like a light bulb, because when it became apparent that we were going to do it, you've sort of captured a bit of the market in how you're doing that. There wasn't really an alternative to say we need to even compare anything. You were just nailed in terms of the language, the delivery, the support. Everything was really great. So it was more about us thinking, if we're going to do this, what's the opportunity? And of course, we're constantly trying to help our clients with their content planning and unpick, if there's a blog article behind it, how do we consistently create that so that our template fits the mold every month, however long it is we want to send it. So we just wanted to make sure that was considered, which probably took us those couple of months to get our ducks in line. So I think that was probably it. In terms of the delay, I remember logging in and there literally being a button that said connect your Mailchimp account and move everything over. And I've seen those things before in technology because we work in the industry and I don't tend to trust them. And it worked really well. Everything had come over, it picked up all of the custom fields and everything that we'd built into Mailchimp. Those are the kind of things I was expecting to go missing that weren't. They were there, and it was really great. And I've recently just been doing some automations as well, and I've just found that process to be a real delight as well. The triggers and everything are really easy, moving people between tags, creating the content. There's lots of options for that. So I would say it surpassed our expectations in terms of that migration process.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think, your point really speaks to that perceived risk around moving data between different platforms. You can come into a platform and it might tell you it'll bring the data in, but will it really bring it in its entirety? And will the custom properties match? Because this is important. It's your data integrity, right? You don't want to bring in data about members and have that member data get fuddled within the migration process. So the Mailchimp import tool is a really important part, I think, of that migration and bringing in your data as it has been in Mailchimp into EcoSend cleanly. So I think now that since you're migrating, you've been using our email builder to send out your monthly newsletter campaigns. You've got some forms, EcoSend forms, to get the email addresses from your website. And as you said, you've been playing around with some of the automations. I think it's for your digital sustainability transformation series. And obviously you have your data and contacts stored in EcoSend contacts. So a pretty comprehensive setup, I'd say, across the platform. So I'd love to know, how have you found things like your email campaign metrics performance? How have you found using these tools, the automation tools you mentioned there, or the data storage? What's been your experience so far?
Really good. Obviously, we try and live our values around digital best practice. We have a small but quite heavily engaged mailing list. I think the open rates and click-through rates are sort of like 50 and 20 odd percent, which is quite high for email normally, but that's because often people are chasing the metrics of the bigger numbers in the list rather than engagement. I was just trying, we closed down our Mailchimp account. I was just trying to, before I got on the call, I thought it'd be really interesting to have a look and see. I think probably it's performing better, but I don't have the data to back it up. But in terms of using the builder itself, I found it really nice. It's, all the things you'd expect. Nice drag and drop interface. Everything is really easy to use. It comes with lots of sort of preset things, which are, from a designer's eye, they're the right size. Often, things can be a bit big or a bit clunky, and all of the fonts and everything are nicely set. So that saves less work effectively. That's really nice. And yes, we have some gated content on the website. We created a thing called a digital sustainability toolkit, and that's a 60-page guide which goes through sort of helping clients understand how to align their digital choices with their mission as an organization and change the culture and the habits. It covers quite a lot of stuff, and we thought there's a lot to consume there. It would be really great if we created an email conversation to go with it. So that was one of the reasons why we gated the content. Instead of just giving somebody the document, they're basically signing up to, there's 8 pillars, and we say there's going to be 8 emails once a week. So it helps the user understand that, okay, we are giving you this massive document and you can do what you like, but actually we'll give you a nudge every week to keep you on course with taking this in, because we know some of that could be quite overwhelming. For some organizations like yourselves, you'd look at it and go, yep, we're doing that, we'll skip to the bits that we're not. But for others, they're right at the garden gate looking in, and it's, lots of the language, lots of those ideas, they just haven't really thought about their digital elements from a sustainability perspective. It's just been features, ease of use, price. Not everyone thinks, shall we look under the hood and see how sustainable this tool is?
I love that. It's definitely, with these concepts, I think drip feeding the ideas and the content through is very important. Otherwise, people are busy as is, but if they're faced with, I've got to make all this change, and the sense is that you have to do it all in one go, that can be harder to digest versus drip feeding a bit more gently through, and it's a bit more actionable, and you've got time in between, to kind of digest it all.
It also helps us tell a slightly different story, because email is a personal connection. You're letting somebody into your mailbox, and that's a space that we spend probably far too much time, but also we want to try and guard that because we don't want to spend all of our time there. So when you put together a guide, it's quite generic, but if you adopt an email series to go alongside it, you can tell some stories about, this section of the guide is all about this, and when we were doing this, we found this bit challenging, or something like that. And it helps build a bit of personality and rapport with somebody who they might not have understood what the motivation for that particular part of the guide might have been, and give it a bit more life.
I see. So it's adding a sort of storytelling framework and a human narrative to it, and remembering that, we are dealing with humans, we are humans ourselves, and it's an easy thing to forget when we're.
And we forget that with our marketing emails, don't we? Because it's always very, there's 5,000 people in this list. I'll say hello, everyone, and make it for everyone. And of course, when we're consuming stuff, we're looking for the stuff that really resonates with us.
I love that. Were there any unexpected benefits or surprising outcomes that came from the switch to EcoSend?
Yeah, I think there were a couple that I mentioned already in terms of the ease of use and the help we got. It's been lovely to feel part of a community. We were a Mailchimp partner, and even as a partner, it can be quite hard to actually engage with them as an organization. They're very US centric, and also they, there's so many partners out there, it felt fairly generic. We've had conversations, me and you and James, obviously, about being together. We've met up and done stuff. It's been a nice thing to feel connected and engaged with. So that's been really nice. And in terms of the email itself, once we'd rebranded and got our new content out, the feedback was really lovely as well. So obviously people finding it easy to engage with the content, with the actual email itself from a technical perspective, which can easily get forgotten.
Yeah, one of the most important outcomes, right? People enjoy and read the emails.
And it works on someone's phone or whatever device it is, all of that stuff, the underpinning of the
Absolutely.
templates. So I haven't had anyone say that it is in any way clunky. And in my device testing that I did before I sent it out, I found it really responsive and very good as well. So that's great.
Thank you. I think obviously James, our CEO, comes very much from a design background, and we've really tried to embed that in the platform, that we never wanted to be the sustainable alternative that means you have to sacrifice the quality of your emails or use a clunky platform as a result. So yeah, delighted to hear that you've found that kind of an intuitive and enjoyable experience.
It's a lovely thing when you log into the dashboard as well, and you can see how many trees you've planted from the emails that you've sent. Just little subtle nudges to the impact that you're having and all of that stuff. Those are all you guys living your values really well, but it's nice to have that communicated back to the user.
Thank you, Dom. And there's so much more we want to do on that, which I won't go off into a long tangent on, but yeah, sort of gamifying the platform around tree planting. But yeah, I'm glad that at least what we have now is a little bit exciting. Dom, you've been really generous with your time, so I just wanted to wrap up, I guess, with maybe like a final question of how would you talk about EcoSend maybe to a fellow B Corp who was considering switching over to us, if you had to maybe summarize it in a sentence or two?
Well, there's already been a few. I know the Good Business Charter was one that I'd nudged your way. That where the values are aligned, it's an absolute no-brainer, because there are organizations out there, they're trying to do good things, and the introduction is almost as simple as you have you looked at that from this angle, from this perspective, because probably the decision around your email marketing provider was what's the biggest name or what's the best cost for me. And as soon as you start considering other angles to that around what is my email provider going to do for me, what is the community they're creating, what is their vision for the future of email, for digital, for the world, those are the kind of things that stand very clear from an EcoSend perspective. You've got a very obvious vision for the future. It's a really positive one for the planet. I find that hard not to get on board with, and I think for people that are thinking from that angle, it's a no-brainer for them too.
Thank you so much, Dom. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I'd highly encourage anyone listening to this to head to vudigital.co.uk, where you can sign up for the monthly newsletter, keep up to date with Dom and the rest of the team. And you can also head to the EcoSend YouTube channel, where we have Dom's episode with us, covering everything around the topic of digital sustainability on the EcoSend podcast. Thank you again so much, Dom. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you, getting to know a bit more about your experience. And thank you to everyone for listening.
God bless. Thanks for having me.